Hey, hi, how's it going? Coming at you live here from beautiful Florida. Somewhat beautiful, it's cloudy, but it was sunny this morning. Either way, you're not here for a weather report, you might be here for lighting, and in that case, you might be enlightened. That was a terrible pun. Why do I do this? Okay, diving in. We got a lot to do, a lot to talk about, a lot to discuss, and I gotta go soon. So, I want to talk about this short film that I just shot. And some of you guys have maybe seen my previous video that I put out last week, just behind the scenes. But in this video, it's dedicated to just the lighting of one particular scene. And that's this kind of like grungy, fluorescent-based workshop scene. And I want to break down the lighting for you guys. It was kind of very particular as far as like the controlling the light went. And control is a huge thing here because I knew with this film I wanted to embrace the shadows a lot. Like really work with the shadows and add in just subtle pools of light. So I knew that I was going to need to control the light, and by that I mean kind of shaping it with modifiers like grids, flags, etc. So the first shot you see here is this pushing in right here from behind, and we kind of set the establishing tone of where this young man is, and this was the establishing shot. And I knew for this, prefacing here, I knew the establishing wide was going to be this from behind, and then we were going to kind of pivot 90 degrees to come in from the side shot as well, and then work with some details. So the coverage I knew was kind of going to be along the lines of that, so that helped me when I was setting up the establish of where the camera coverage was going to be further down the line. So I want to start with kind of like the motivating light source here, and that was this fluorescent light that you see raking down on this kind of workshop back, like with the tools and all of that. And we just kind of had this gradient of fluorescent light coming from above. So that I knew was kind of going to set the tone for this scene. So that's what Michael, the Gaffer, thanks again to Michael. If you haven't seen him, check him out in the last video also. But Michael and I kind of brainstormed and we were like, let's just I knew I wanted it to be a tube light. I was like, give me a tube light. I didn't know if I wanted it to be in frame or not, being a practical or just controlled. But we opted for out of frame, and here's why. So going back to the control thing that I said before, we used like a grid for this tube to keep the light spilling just directly on this backsplash, because that's the only place I wanted it. I didn't want it raking around the room. I didn't want it bouncing. I didn't want it to act as like a high key fill or anything like that. So that was the first light that I added, was this tube. And I don't know what he had it set to. I think it was in the range of like a 4,000 Kelvin with a heavy green shift. But Michael had that set up on his end on Sidus Link. And then that was the first light here, and that started to get the feeling. And then to continue this light wrap around Peter, because I knew that from behind, Peter was going to be heavy in the shadows, and I wanted some sort of accent on the back of him, on his shoulders, etc., continuing on. So I added in another light that was overhead, which is really just extending that tube light a little bit more around. So right above his head, we had on a Cardellini, we rigged up a Amaran F22C. And again, we had this controlled with a grid on the softbox, but then on top of it, Michael and I didn't like how the shadow or the light was really wrapping around the backside of Pete, and it was just giving too much light on the back of him. We just really wanted a little kiss, almost like a rim light from above. So Michael took some Duvetine, just some black fabric, and just clamped it up around it. So we just only had like a little window of like this big of the light spilling through, and that was just hitting the back of his head, back of his shoulders, and that was really about it. So we had these colors matched up both for this fluorescent tone. And I do want to make it known also that the white balance for the camera was right around 3,800 Kelvin. Now, to add some color contrast, this is where things get fun. So we added a practical, and this was for color contrast, really is why I wanted this. And what we did here is set an Aputure B7C bulb in this like fixture, and this is kind of like a workshop lamp, and this was to motivate a pool of light around the machine he was working on. And this light was set to about a 3,200 Kelvin, and that really motivated the key light for the duration of the scene. I wanted warm just because I wanted it to I wanted what he was working on and him to feel warm, and the rest of the scene to kind of feel grungy. It was kind of like this heartwarming feel. So then continuing on with this kind of warm tungsten practical, the toolbox on the frame right looked pretty cool. So we wanted to accent that with a little bit more light and just get some more level in place. So what we did for that was take another Amaran T2C tube, and we rigged this up to the ceiling as well. And with the Cardellini, we rigged it up. And then we just had this set to another 3,200 Kelvin facing the toolbox. And to control the light, again, we didn't want light spilling around, so we used another grid. And that just isolated that light only onto the toolbox just to give another pop and pool of light. So we really start to see this color contrast of fluorescent and then warm tungstens. Now, to continue on with these colors, because that's essentially just a couple more pops of light that we needed, continuing on with this color contrast. So the next thing that we did was on frame left, it was still just really dark. We had a lot of really deep shadows that were just crushed on the waveform. So we took another light, and this was an Amaran, oh boy, it might have been a T2C. It was an Amaran tube, T2C or 4C. And we just had this rigged up and bouncing right off of a white bounce board. So we were just getting a return bounce just as a very subtle, soft ambience. We didn't want anything directional. We just almost wanted room tone or a little bit of level. And this was matched with the fluorescent lights as well. So to that 4000 and green shift or whatever it was, is what we had for this light source. So we're starting to fill in a lot of the shadow area. So for the second shot, what changed and what stayed the same? Most of it really did stay the same, and I want to talk about why. The first thing that I want to say is that time is always of the essence, and there's never enough time that you think there is. So, and my reason for that is that I really wanted soft light. When we came around to the side of Pete working on this, I wanted really, really soft light on him. So my plan was to rig up like a small light and bounce it, like shoot it into this piece of muslin and bounce it off of the muslin on the desk and bounce up back onto him as return. But we just didn't have the time. We had limited hands, limited time, and it just didn't work. So that's a lot of the times we're gonna need to make like last minute decisions, and that's exactly what happened here. So I actually used the B7C bulb that was in this fixture as our key light. And what I did was just kind of move it around a little bit because the wood, there was a wood desk and a wood wall. So we've got a lot of wood warm tones. So when you bounce off this, it's gonna return a really warm light. And then just having it be this V or shooting it into the corner, it's almost acting as like this cove of bounce material. So by bouncing it into that, we got a little bit of return back onto his face. So just using this practical as a little bit more directional key or direction as far as bouncing goes onto him worked really, really nicely. And it actually gave a very nice, soft, sidey, warm light as if I were bouncing it off of something like muslin. And then the only other thing that changed was, yes, some levels changed. Like the toolbox light we brought down, some of the ambience that we brought down as well. But we kept everything where it was. But in the back room that you see off in frame right, we did add in a tube light for this shot because I didn't want this room to fall to black. Like, yes, I wanted it dim, I didn't want attention brought to it, but I just wanted some sort of level. So we just took an Amaran T4C tube and just set this up out of frame, just casting as a little bit of like room tone ambience in that back room, and it's very like super subtle. It is such a low level that you don't really recognize it, but I just wanted something there so the blacks weren't completely crushed in that room. So there were subtle changes that we made when we did switch the shots, but a lot did also stay the same. But ultimately, if I were to change anything, maybe it would have been ask for some more time and just, you know, really massage that soft side light with the muslin. But other than that, like I'm really proud of it. But literally, I cannot stress it enough. The name of the game here is control. If I hadn't controlled the lighting, it would have spilled everywhere and it just would not have had the same look that it did. So that's, I always say it, control your lighting, control your light source, because it's so important to not just throw light everywhere. You really want to work with the shadows and work with the shadows up. So really controlling your light with grids, flags, etc. is really going to give you the look that you want. So with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this. Check out the behind the scenes video. I'll put the link down below as well. And you still got a little bit of time when seeing this to come out to Sam Newton's Film Festival and see it premiere for the first time in Los Angeles. I'm gonna leave the link down below. The tickets are going fast, so get them while you can. But that's all I got for you guys. There's ducks behind me. I love you guys, and I'll see you soon. All right, see you later. Bye-bye.